Let's talk about the Philadelphia 76ers, their value for this upcoming fantasy season. Of course, we're talking injuries as well. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and I think I'm going to have to challenge that call. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at Basketball Monster. So disheveled. I'm so disgusted. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We're available on all platforms. Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl drafts are rolling, apart from the two leagues that haven't filled. We've got about 40 spots left in head-to-head categories. We've got 60 spots left for head-to-head points. I know I said that auction draft will come this week. It will. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. Just be on the lookout at linktree/AlloFBBowl. QR code is on the screen. Link is in the description. Of course, we also have the FBI World Cup that you guys can join. 12-team leagues, about 600 teams in total. Big grand prize overall. Multiple phases with redrafts during the season. So click on the links for that in the description. You can find both the FBI World Cup and the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl. We are here to talk about the Philadelphia 76ers. A quick little update. ESPN, I talked about how they'd updated their category rankings last week. They dropped another update this week. And sometimes I love different opinions. Part of the value that I think that you can have in fantasy, whether it's me, you thinking that I give you an advantage or somebody else giving you an advantage or whatever it is from diversity of thought. Is from differences of opinion of, I think this guy will start, or I think this guy will do this, or I think this guy will play, all that sort of stuff, right? I love that. I love that idea. And ESPN often has divergent thoughts to where I am. What I don't get is that over the last week, there are certain players on that ESPN category ranking list who have moved 80 spots. Brook Lopez, for example, went from 50 to, not 50. Josh Giddey moved from 55 to 11. I really don't know what changed in the last week to move Chet Holmgren from 10 to 24. No idea what possibly changed in that scenario. Brook Lopez is now at 129. He was 52nd last week. That makes absolutely zero sense. Why did that happen? If it's Zubats was 90th and now he's 41st. Why? I don't know. I don't know why there are bulk changes, but they are. Now, I'm waiting. At the moment, with ESPN rankings, at the time that I'm recording this, they've published a ranking list for head-to-head categories that is the top 150. It has not, again, for whatever reason, I don't know what the hell goes on over there, but for whatever reason, that updated ranking list has not been put into their projection page inside your league, and it has not been loaded into their draft room. So you can click on the category league rank on their front page, and you read the thing, and you read the list. But if you go into a draft, it's a different list. If you go into the projections page, it's a different list. So it doesn't make sense, very clearly. I'm hoping by tomorrow that the new rankings are loaded into draft rooms, and then I am going to start a series of dropping new updated sleeper videos. Yahoo updated their rankings 2 days ago. ESPN's updated their rankings now. So once they actually load those into their draft rooms, then I will do an updated sleeper show probably tomorrow. Just letting you know what has happened. And if you are looking at ESPN in the draft room, understand that those rankings are going to adjust in the category league because they just dropped new rankings. So just be aware of that. What are we actually talking about? Well, it's the Sixers. Yeah, a team that honestly most of the time I hate talking about from a fantasy projection perspective because they are terrible at giving information on injuries and there's just a lot of them. And as always, the guys that are in or out have such wild swings on every other player on the roster that they can be a confusing team to talk about. I'm going to imagine a utopia, so to speak. Imagine this. Just picture it. I'm going to talk about their projected starting lineup, assuming they're all healthy. I know it's a novel concept. And it's probably never going to happen. It will at some point, but that's how I'm going to approach this. And we'll talk about the differences and what will be changing as things go. But I do think that if they were ready to go, they would start. Tyrese Maxey, well, that's going to happen irrespective. He's healthy, he's starting, done. I think that the dominatrix, VJ Edgecombe, all right, here's a vote. Should VJ Edgecombe be the dominatrix or the cuck? Which one? Cuck's a bit shorter, but it's a bit more aggressive. I'll stay with dominatrix. Kelly Oubre, I think will start. Paul George, yeah, I think he'll start. And Joel Embiid. Certain he will start when he's healthy. Of course, they're not. They won't be ready for opening night, it seems. I think the bench group will be Quentin Grimes. I think it'll be Jared McCain, who's also not healthy. I think it'll be the big stiffy, Adem Bona. I think it will be Trendon Watford, and I think Justin Edwards would be my guess as their 5-man group. There is Amazon analyst Kyle Lowry. There is Eric Gordon. There's the guy that started their preseason game today, the Trojan himself, Domi Barlow, who apparently has been the talk of camp, which is random. But you hear that thing, Barlow's been the talk of camp, and then they start him, and you go, hang on, what's going on? So just be aware that Dom Barlow is a guy that I've loved on this channel for years. Is he finally doing something to figure it out? It's possible, I guess. So just be aware of that. Just be aware that Barlow's just someone that's just sneaking up at the moment. What are the questions regarding that rotation? Well, of course, the number one question is going to be Joel Embiid's health. I have drafted Joel Embiid this season. I know that you would say, Josh, you talk about not drafting Embiid, and there are very specific circumstances. That's why blanket statements aren't useful for anybody. Embiid last season, even per game, was not very good. 17th overall for categories, 22nd for points leagues. He only played 30 minutes. He had 33 usage, but the efficiency was dreadful, under 30 from 3. He looked like he couldn't jump or move, and his blocks were down. He looks skinnier, that is true, but I don't think he's going to be ready for opening night. But like I said, I have drafted Joel Embiid. In 2 leagues, or actually, one was a mock draft, but in one legitimate league, the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Roto League, I picked Joel Embiid. Why? It's a Roto League. And I know and I've talked about this multiple times as well. The idea is in Roto, you want to really look at totals. That's more important. I disagree. Totals is not an important thing, or as important, because your replacement level player is higher in a Roto League, and it also does not matter in a Roto League when a player plays or when he doesn't play. The uncertainty of will he be available at this point doesn't matter. You get all the stats whenever they happen. And yeah, look, of course, you want your stars to play more. That's why we're not taking Embiid in round 1. But if you're in a situation where you've got deeper benches, weekly leagues, games caps, Embiid is draftable in certain spots. I still would not do it in any head-to-head format inside the top 50, maybe top 60. In a Roto League, I would consider it in the 40s, but I probably still would do it in the 50s. Just because, again, my replacement level is higher, and you ask why that is because in a Roto League, your 11th guy replaces your injured player, not the players off the waiver wire. All right, that's the idea behind the Roto format. So you get a higher replacement player. Plus, if I get 50 games from Embiid and he doesn't play in March or April or February, doesn't matter, I got the 50. In head-to-head, if he doesn't play in March and February, then you're just losing. Like, you can't do anything with that. So that's more useful to know, I think. That will bring us into, and we'll talk about him a little bit later, but they played the first preseason game today over in Abu Dhabi, I think it was. And it was Adem Bona who started. Bona was there, not Andre Drummond. So again, we'll talk more about Bona later. I love to. Bona is a must-draft player. And again, when I say that, I'm going to do a show called Must Draft, and it's going to be a piss-take show in terms of that nomenclature. But when I say must draft, it means somebody in your league has to draft him. He cannot sit undrafted in a league, Adem Bona. Doesn't mean you reach up to get him. You can, to a degree, but he has to be picked. Adem Bona. He will be a starter. He will average big block numbers, good field goals, solid free throws, good rebounder. He's going to be the traditional big man. And this is why the question is, because if Embiid plays 20 games, Bona's numbers are through the roof, but also it impacts a lot of other guys. And we'll talk about how it impacts Tyrese Maxey later. And the same goes with Paulie George, who, again, I'm trying to think whether I've drafted him this season. I think I have in one league. because he's going at ridiculous areas. Yeah, George's health, another knee surgery, is frustrating. But it wasn't just that. Last season, all of his per numbers were down, or his shooting numbers were down too. Now, he was still excellent with steals, 1.8, in just 33 minutes. He only played 41 games. His usage was well down, 23%. And he shot 36 from 3 and 43 from the field. 4 assists, 5 rebounds, 16 points. They're not disastrous numbers. He was 56th per game, 70th in points leagues. Like, they're not great, obviously. Not what the guy used to be as a second-round lock as a player. I thought he'd do more usage-wise and the efficiency would hold a little bit. I'm not ruling George out as someone who doesn't get back to his best, because that's done. He's 35. He's not going to be his best. But there are easy areas for improvement. 43 just turns into 46%. Not a big difference. Not even an elite shooting number. 36 from 3, turn it to 38. All right. 16 points becomes 18 points with 2.6 threes. Cool. 5.3 rebounds is 6, maybe? All right. All that is very easily done, and then he's a top 30 guy. I don't think that takes huge thinking to get there, to be honest. I'm trying to remember whether I actually did pick Paul George. I think I did in one of the drafts. Let me have a look. No, I haven't actually. Interesting. I thought I had. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But yeah, that's obviously a key. But then with him out, somebody has to take that role. And it means more for guys like Kelly Oubre, who is a player that needs a lot of usage and minutes to really make a difference. And he's going to have that especially early. The next part of this is, what does Nick Nurse do with the guards? Because there is Edgecombe, there is Maxey, eventually there'll be McCain, but there's also Grimes, there's also Oubre. How does he want to use them? Because Nurse likes big minutes onto players. He likes big minutes. But us, me and as an analyst and as a fantasy player and you as a player, have to determine, will he lock into somebody? Will it be Oubre? Will it be Edgecombe? Will it be Grimes? I didn't even mention him. Will it be McCain? That's a lot of bloody guards. Right? So somebody is going to lose out in a huge way. And you might be a Grimes guy. You might be all for Edgecombe. You might be a McCain guy. You might be big into Kelly Oubre. Who isn't? Right? So there's a lot of ways that can go. One of the questions, like I've mentioned already, we'll talk about more later, but how hard do you go for Bona? Is he a 13th round pick? Do you go into the 10th and get like, hey, I might get 3 weeks of starting numbers, top 70, and then he's useless? He will be one of those guys that when Embiid is playing will be very tough to hold, but you'd like to hold him for like a week or so after Embiid returns, because Embiid can get hurt again easily. But that is a question. And then one of the other questions here is about Tyrese Maxey, because ideally you look at this, and I've heard people say, I'll take Tyrese Maxey in the first round in the top 10. To me, he's not that player. I don't believe we should be looking at him as a first round guy. To me, in category leagues and points leagues, debatable. It's more second half of the second round for a very clear reason. He was hurt last season. Like, he got injured multiple times. So he's not immune from that. But also, when Embiid was not there, his numbers weren't very good. He was not close to a first or second or third round player. So the idea is, Maxey and George are going to be hurt and they're going to be out all the time. So Embiid and George are going to be out. So Maxey's going to go off. Not really. Yeah, he did put up numbers. His usage, Tyrese Maxey, went up to, 32%? When those guys were not playing. That's a good number. But his true shooting dropped to under 56%. His field goals dropped to under 44%. He averaged under 5.5 assists per 36 minutes. They are bad numbers. His numbers, like for comparison, if you look at what Tyrese Maxey did in the games that George and Embiid were out versus what Quentin Grimes did in games where George and Embiid were out, Grimes' games were better. Like, they just were. And I'm not saying that you should look at Grimes that way, or you're drafting Grimes super high, but Maxey was not good in those games when that extra load giggity was placed onto him. Bad rebounds, subpar assists, not good field goal percentage at all, and that really sunk him. And it wasn't actually gigantic steps up overall. So, yeah, there is an idea of Embiid missing a bunch of times, so Maxey's going to go off. I don't know. And the risk is, if Joel plays 60 games, even 50, Maxey, instead of a 30 usage guy, is a 24 usage guy. And then that's not worth a first round pick either. So just be a little cautious on it. To me, again, back end second, I'm better with versus the turn or even in the first round. Today's episode, as I go a little bit long there, is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth. Might be 401ks or properties or investments. So when you don't have that full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. And that is where Monarch Money comes in. It's the all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. It's built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. It does the heavy lifting so you can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, and get smart categorizations of your spending without even opening up a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That is 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONNBA. All right, let's go into some of the undervalued and overvalued guys. And honestly, given where ADP sit for these guys at the moment, I'm not sure there's a huge amount of players that fit this description. Paul George, I do think, is undervalued for ESPN points. Now, the Embiid is probably positioned correctly in most spots. At the moment, Embiid is around the 50s and 60s in ranks, ADP around that mark, which I think is fair. Per game, Embiid might be top 10. But you're never doing that. George, at the moment, again, these things can change at any point, but at the moment, Paul George, for an ESPN points league, if I look at where he's ranked, is 98th. It's just too low. It's just way too low. And I know there are concerns about his injury. I know there are concerns about the efficiency and his age. But I would bank that, at least on a per-game basis, he actually can improve over last season. And 98 just actually makes it valuable. Now, his initial ESPN category rank was 37th, which is very ridiculous. But now it's down to 70. Again, what the hell changed in the last week? I don't know. But he's down at 70, which is more reasonable. And on Yahoo, he's around 60s and 70s, 6, 7, that sort of area. All right? That's fine, but doesn't present immense value. 98 does. That is immense value for Paul George at number 98. And if I look at overvalue guys, I'm not sure there is anybody either. Because I look at all the ADPs and all the ranks and the arguments to take them in certain spots, I think it relatively makes sense. Maxey hasn't come in that high. His ADP is 20. Reasonable. Like I've said, I've heard people suggest that they will take him at the turn. I've heard people say he goes in the first round. But the data overall doesn't show that yet. It might, but it doesn't yet. So I could have put Tyrese Maxey there as an overvalued player just for some of those reasons that I mentioned about the fact that the usage is so low when Embiid and George are healthy, and then when they're out, the efficiency falls way off, and that leads to, and we saw it, he was not good when those guys are out. Doesn't mean that it'll be the case, but it is not, the evidence to suggest that he'll be awesome when they're out does not exist. I'm not precluding it, but the evidence of that just is not a thing. Maxey was great last season. 14th ranked player, 15th in points leagues. That's all well and good. The value was pretty good last season. He also did it on some numbers that I'm going to go, I don't know, 1.8 steals. Okay. I will know that how I view steals is they have a huge chance of regressing. And again, you have potential efficiency problems that can cause issues. Not a problem with picking him. I'm just not going to go super high based on the Embiid stuff or George stuff or however you want to frame that. I don't think that is worthwhile looking at in that sort of a way. Now, we've talked about these three guys at length. These are the three guys with the star upside on this team. It is Embiid, it is Maxey, it is George. To me, I'll say it again. I would take Joel Embiid. If he falls into the 60s or 70s there head-to-head league, I'll take that chance. I would take Paul George in the 80s. I will take that chance. In roto leagues, I'll bump them 10 to 12 spots. Okay. Maxey, I won't do at the turn, but I will do at the end of the second round in categories and points, understanding that there are some concerns about what actually happens when those guys are out, and if this team actually is terrible, and I don't think they will be. Some of what happened last season is they had a really strong incentive when things started going awry, and then Maxey hurt his finger / back at the same time, to shut it down to keep the pick, and even then it was borderline odds. This year's pick is harder to keep. It's got to be top 4, meaning they have to win the lottery. Remember, if you finish with the worst record in the entire NBA, you've got about a 50% chance of being in that top 4 area. Your most likely outcome, if you have the worst record of the NBA, is pick 5. So, for Philadelphia to tank their asses off to keep that pick, They need to be the worst team in the NBA to give themselves a coin flip chance of keeping the pick. That doesn't seem like it will be the path. And if Embiid plays 50 and George plays 60, they will be nowhere near that. So I'm not as worried about tanking stuff unless it's just somehow worse than last season. Right? And everyone gets hurt opening night for the whole year, then it's going to be very hard for them to be in that position where they're trying to protect their pick so they don't lose it. That is going to be hard to do, I think. Some new arrivals. Let's talk about Edgecombe, because we saw the preseason game today. He was the number 3 overall pick. I liked the pick from him there. I was debating whether it was him or Knipple, the big areola, who I would select in that spot. But Edgecombe got the nod, and I think the fit with him next to Maxey is pretty strong. I thought he looked pretty good in that game. Again, it is preseason, but he got the nod as a starter. And I think there is zero shot that Jared McCain will be ahead of him when he returns. And I also don't know, and I don't think that Grimes will be either, given the way that Grimes has just signed a qualifying offer. And they still need him, obviously, but I think Edgecombe is as close to locking in that starting spot as you can. Now, the numbers I got on the screen are his summer league numbers, 21.5 points. Bad 3-point shooting, but good steals, great blocks. And today, look, again, I thought he looked comfortable with his driving. I think the shot is going to be terrible. I think he's going to have some real efficiency problems this season, Edgecombe. So if you are drafting him, you do have to be cautious of that, because I think it's going to be a problem. Now, he's currently ranked Vij, the dominatrix. Like the updated, if you look at the updated ESPN category rankings, not in the top 150. Tyus Jones is, of course. But not in the top 150. The earlier ones, he was 122nd, so they've knocked him down for some reason. On Yahoo, he's an ADP of 138. Perfect late round pick. Round 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, whatever. Take him in those last rounds. What do you get out of him? 13 points, 5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 1.7 steals, 0.8 blocks. Might be 41 from the field. And if it doesn't work out, and it probably will be shaky early, you can move on. But you're also in a situation where you won't even have the pressure from McCain coming early, and you won't have Embiid and George out there. So you might get a little bit of a usage bump early on. Trendon Watford joins the team, so does Jabari Walker. Incredible to me that Walker is only on a 2-way. I think he's a good player. Trendon Watford is an interesting guy. Now, they did go with Dom Barlow over Watford today as the starter in place of Paul George, so keep an eye on that. And Barlow's another name on there. Look, honestly, if Barlow is a starter, even he's a 2-way guy, but if he starts, I'm adding him until they come back. It's not a long-term play, but Barlow will be usable. And then there's Jonah Broom, the second round pick who put up really big numbers in college. I don't think there's any shot of that happening in the NBA, to be honest. I just don't think that the way that he played in college has any resemblance to a way that he could have success in the league. Edgecombe is going to be the interesting one, and we watch to see what maybe Watford can do later on in the season. The other new arrival is Hunter Salas, who's an interesting wing player, but again, it's a 2-way guy. He's going to have Justin Edwards in front of him as well. Eric Gordon's still there, plus all of those other guards, forwards, Grimesy and Oubre, and those sort of guys who are ahead of him currently. That's going to make it tough to make an impact. We'll come back to talk more Sixers. Today's episode, though, is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. And with the NFL season here, and FanDuel is ready to go with an offer that you don't want to miss. That's right, new customers can bet just $5. And you get $300 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. So pick a bet, put $5 down. If it hits, you unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. It's easy to use. You can do live betting, same game parlays, player props, futures. Of course, I think baseball season finished today, so you don't need to worry about that anymore. NHL season starting off. WNBA finals as well. Whatever it is, you could do it on FanDuel. Just make sure you win that first $5 bet so you get the $300 in bonus bet. So what are you waiting for? Go to FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. And don't forget to gamble responsibly. We are here talking about the Philadelphia 76ers and their fantasy value for the upcoming season. Let's take a look at some potential breakout guys on this squad. Adem Bona I've mentioned already because I think he has to be drafted. He's currently ahead of Andre Drummond. I think that will hold. Drummond is actually washed. He's done. So Bona could be a 28-minute a night, 27-minute a night guy. for the first week or two. I just don't know when Embiid is coming back. So it is a huge opportunity here for Bona. Now, he will go back into a reserve role. And we saw last season in reserve roles, when Embiid plays, it's really hard to be excited about it. And your ability to hold on to Bona is going to be dependent on how your league sets up. Are you just rotating guys through? Because if he's a 17-minute a night player, you're not going to get anything out of it. But are you so far ahead of the competition that you can afford that? All those are little context parts to it. The other one to talk about is Jared McCain. And when I talk about these breakout players, it's about, hey, who has the potential, who has the opportunity maybe to do it? McCain maybe does. But I'm going to tell you, I don't think he will. For a very specific reason. Two reasons. He's out to start the season. He's not going to be ready to begin the year with a thumb surgery. He had the knee surgery last season. Last season, he had some really unbelievable numbers. In his 8 starts, he played, and this is again what Nick Nurse likes, 37 minutes a night. He averaged 24 points as a rookie. He had a true shooting percentage of 60%. He averaged 4 assists. He didn't block a single shot. He actually blocked 1 shot total. I think he blocked 1 shot. No, he didn't. He blocked 0 shots. 0 shots for the season. And he was a good free throw guy with limited attempts. But that was with everybody out. Before he got hurt, he moved back to the bench and he did nothing. His minutes came down. The insane efficiency, which he did the double, the fooling that he loves to do and people love to do that can get you confused in fantasy. Increased opportunity tied in with increased efficiency is the rare combo that looks awesome, but it also fools you into believing that it's got an ability to stick. Because sometimes if a player goes from 24 minutes to 34 minutes and their efficiency drops, we go, okay, whatever. But if they go on a hot streak at the same time they play 12 extra minutes and get a 10 percentage point bump in usage, you go, oh my God, the greatest player of all time has arrived. And then we forget the fact that in those games he came off the bench, he was pretty bad. And he wasn't useful and he doesn't do enough in any other areas. Like he had a 28 usage when Embiid and George weren't playing Jared McCain. Like that's great. But we're talking Maxey, who was also out when McCain was doing it. We're talking Edgecombe. We're talking Grimes, who wasn't even on the team at that point. And there's still Oubre plus George and Embiid returning. So he's a guy that needs a lot of minutes and a lot of usage with really good shooting to be a good fantasy player. And he was great for like a week, 2 weeks. A little bit of insanity. But injured, won't start, don't think it's going to happen. But I put his name there because what if a bunch of weird stuff happens? Which it could. I just don't think it will. Injuries. 3 guys are probably not going to be ready opening night. We've talked about it at length. Joel Embiid, Paul George, and Jared McCain. Knee injury for Embiid. Again, of course. Knee injury for George. Again, of course. And then McCain, off a knee injury, has a thumb surgery. Not good. All those guys will not be ready. Opening night is my guess. It's my understanding. If we take a look at the schedule stuff, there are a couple of important things. Unfortunately, they have the most back-to-backs in the league with 16. Now, Paul George is probably not going to play any of them. Embiid is certainly not going to play any of them. Everyone else is fine. So, you already know this, that you're going to lose 16 from George and Embiid. Now, of course, they might be injured in that spot anyway. So, I don't think it's going to influence your draft decision because they're already falling so far down that it doesn't really matter. But what is important is they are one of a handful of teams that have a 5-game week in the fantasy playoffs. It's the week that begins March the 9th, which if you use my fantasy playoff schedule, it's semi-final week. It is also the week, I believe, the week before Yahoo default playoffs start. Now, will you make a decision on that in your draft? The only time I think you would really care significantly is with a Tyrese Maxey. Because like if you take a flyer on Edgecombe and he struggles for 3 months, you're not holding him for a 5-game week. But it gives maybe a marginal tick up to someone like Oubre and maybe to Maxey as well. But also, like, if it's a 5-game week and they're not really competing that much, are they playing all 5? Probably not. Probably not. Now, I couldn't really find a great area to like include this guy in terms of a section of the show, but we do have to talk Quentin Grimes because we know that at the end of last season, Grimes was putting up like just ridiculous numbers. He almost scored 50 in one game. He was an absolute like league winner at times. I don't like to use that word, but that's what he was. And in the games where we had no Embiid, no George, and no Maxey, Quentin Grimes was ridiculous. That's 580 games. He had 31 usage. He averaged almost 6 assists per 36 minutes. Now, his efficiency was a little bit off, but he had a decent steal rate. He is a very good player, and I've liked him as a player for a long time. But again, he is on a 1-year qualifying offer, Quentin Grimes. They couldn't work out a long-term deal. He wanted 20 plus million. They said, no, have your qualifying offer. Because that was a lot of silly season nonsense. I'm not saying that Grimes can't be a good player. I think he can. And if he's put in that situation, he will do it again. But he's not going to be ahead of George, Maxey, Embiid. Even like prioritized ahead of McCain, maybe? Edgecombe? It's going to require basically what happened last season, a confluence of unfortunate events. Shout out to Lemony Snicket, which confluence is not the right term for that, but you know what I mean. For him to do that again. Now, is Grimes draftable? I don't know. Over the course of last season, in 27 minutes, he was 131st in categories, 125th in points leagues. Understanding that he was useless and then awesome. And you split the difference there, which is what that 27 minutes shows. Is he a 27-minute-a-night player this season? Probably. That is probably a reasonable expectation of what Grimes does. He's got a rank on Yahoo of 120. All right. He, on the updated ESPN category ranks, is at 145. Again, pretty reasonable. Pretty reasonable to look at that. And if Embiid, George, and McCain are out to start the season, and Grimes isn't on this trip with them at the moment for these preseason games because of the contract, he could easily start. But, would they really move Oubre up to the 4 and play Oubre, Grimes, Edgecombe, Maxey? Because I don't think that Grimes would push ahead of Oubre, honestly. Meaning that even if this is the lineup that they have, will he even be a starter? It's debatable to me. So I would rather take Edgecombe, even though he hasn't proven it, largely because I think they'll be giving more minutes on a regular basis to VJ. But not a problem with taking Grimes at all. Not a problem. So there's a lot of interesting things on this team. I would not touch Embiid in the first 50 picks. George, I wouldn't do that either. I'm a little bit more positive on Paul George's injury status than Embiid's, honestly. McCain, I don't think is a 12-team guy. Maxey's more of a second half, second round than first half, second round player, where we worry a little bit about some efficiency stuff, but the usage will be good. I like Edgecombe late. Adem Bona has to be drafted. I'm not into McCain, but I do think Oubre is a good draftable player late who's got an ability to hold a role all season. And then Grimes you can do and see what happens. And then just keep a really close eye on Dom Barlow. Because if George is out, he started. If he starts the next preseason game, then I'm really going, all right, now I am interested. So just watch to see how Nick Nurse uses him. Also remember, Nick Nurse told us that Paul Reed was going to be playing a Pascal Siakam type role a couple of years ago as a power forward and literally never played a second at the 4. So just also be aware of that. But just keep a small little eye there on the big fella, Dom Barlow. Keep an eye on the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl as well, linktree/LOFB Bowl. Sign up in the description or the QR code or just typing that in. Also in the description is the link to the FBI World Cup where you can sign up for more super competitive and fun leagues. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.